Geometry and measurement in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures. Before we look into geometry, it is important we understand a little about their basic mathematical system. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander mathematics is a base 5 system, also known as the one-hand system. This alludes to their use of their fingers or even their toes for counting. For First Nations Australians and Torres Strait Islanders, maths was and is more about the relationship between elements, including the environment and the community, and how these work together than basic numbers. Some examples of ways they calculated and documented their mathematics include the use of a disposable abacus, using nuts and rocks as the little beads, as well as drawings and carvings on trees, rocks and bark. Geometric aspects of maths like points, lines, angles and shapes can be seen throughout Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures through artwork, their skills for land navigation and seasonal predictions, as well as the construction of their tools. So what does this look like in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture, and what problems can be solved? Geometry plays a crucial role in the creation and maintenance of songlines and dreaming tracks. First Nation Australians use geometric principles to map out accurate pathways. Songlines are pathways that cross over the Australian landscape. They are both spiritual and physical. They're a representation of the spirits during the dream time. These pathways are used for navigation and communication between groups of Indigenous peoples. They utilise landmarks and environmental navigation systems like stars, the movement of the sun and moon, and the shape of the land to create reference points to develop their maps of their surroundings. Measurement techniques were created to track distances and locations along these songlines. Their measurement units consisted of body measurements, for example, body lengths, hand spans, and also the distance between the fingertip to fingertip. These are utilised to determine the distances between landmarks and various references when utilising these dreaming tracks. They use their observations and knowledge of the relationship between things to determine their measurements. An example given by Dr. Kay Owens looks at a problem of the length of a spear. She says, a spear may be too long for a particular person, too short, or just right. The length of the spear is thus measured relative to the user. The way that First Nations peoples of Australia built their fish traps required an understanding of geometry. They had to be a specific shape in order to be functional. Some had concentric rings as it reached to the centre, which guided and caught the fish. Others were on a much larger scale, like the image on the slide. They utilised stones in circular arrangements so that when the tide receded, the fish would be caught. The notions of circumference and area are used in these examples. Through art, we can see the use of geometric shapes such as circles, as well as the use of lines and points. Most of these shapes in Indigenous art are symbolic of something. For example, circular shapes often represent a waterhole or communal meeting place, and lines often represent a direction to travel or a journey. An example of practical art is their creation and use of basket weaving. It is a form of engineering that required an application of measurement and shape to form patterned baskets which could be used for many different things. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples used the earth and their knowledge of its cycles to determine and measure the time. Time was and is more complex than looking at a wall clock or having a calendar. It represents the past, present and future, known as every when. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders utilise their geometric knowledge and calculations to determine the position of the sun, the moon and the stars in order to tell the time and the change of the seasons. Their time was cyclical and was very connected to the environment around them. Most of the previously discussed uses and aspects of geometry in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures can still be seen today, especially and even more so now in art and land navigation. So how has it changed over time? There are some communities that are still using both their traditional systems alongside modern systems of maths. Most Aboriginal communities were forced to conform to a new way of thinking about mathematics due to colonisation. There is a community in Arnhem Land that uses the concept of Yulnul maths, which focuses on the interrelationship of the land and its people. This concept links to the notions discussed by researchers on ethnomathematics, which looks at the relationship between maths and culture.